Well, hey everyone! Welcome to episode 357 of F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen with your host, Matt Payne. This week on the podcast, I'm excited to bring you a fun recording that I had with an American photographer living in Japan, Mark Davis. Mark is a 24-year veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces, which is what brought him to Japan originally. But he has quickly found the forests of Japan to be a healing force in his struggle against PTSD and the rigors of military service. He has also come to greatly appreciate the nuanced differences of Japanese culture, which have rubbed off on him and his approaches to making images. Before we dive in, I wanted to thank our latest supporters on Patreon, including Larry Mawson, Alan, no last name given, Chris Murray, and Darlene Louise. You are all awesome. I try to keep this podcast ad-free, so your listener support is greatly appreciated. If you too would like to support the show, just head over to patreon.com/fstop and listen. You can join for free and engage in weekly discussions about each episode over on Patreon. Okay, let's get to this week's episode with Mark Davis. All right, Mark Davis, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Hey, Matt, it's great to be here. Really honored to get the opportunity to come on here and talk a little bit about me in Japan.
Yeah, I'm excited because I don't think we've had anyone on the show yet that is from Japan. I think I've had maybe one person who lives in Japan, but it's cool to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So, Mark, for people who aren't familiar with you and your photography, go ahead and tell us a little bit about who Mark Davis is.
My name's Mark Davis. I'm from a small town in northeast Arkansas. Pretty much surrounded with nature there. There's not a lot going on, and I had to get out of there. And one way to do that was join the military. That was a pretty easy way. And I've done that for about almost 24 years, and finally hung it up this year in May. I'm married. My wife is Japanese, and I have a 7-year-old daughter. It keeps me pretty busy and takes up a lot of time, but I'm currently living in Japan. We retired here. That was the plan. She followed me all over the world, so when it was time to hang the uniform up, we decided to remain in Japan, and I live in a town right outside of Tokyo. I'm an amateur photographer. There's opportunities that kind of have started to arise, so I don't know where that's going to take me, but we'll see. I've been kind of going with the flow, so to speak.
Nice. And how long have you been making photographs?
So I started back in 2012, but I didn't really get serious till about 6 years ago. And I started really kind of buckling down and taking it a lot more serious.
Gotcha. And what branch of the armed forces are you in, or were you in?
I was in the Army. I spent my first 4 years in the Marine Corps, and then I switched over to the Army.
Okay.
I finished out the career.
Never heard of anyone doing that before.
Now doesn't happen a lot, but it does.
Okay. Well, nice. Well, Mark, I just want to dive right in and talk about, how you got into photography. And, most specifically, I'd love to hear you talk about how your military service and your experience with PTSD influenced your journey.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I was stationed in Okinawa back around 2018, and this is when I started to take it a little bit more serious, and I was looking for things to kind of fill a gap in time. So anybody that's been in the military has dealt with deployments, combat stress, all these these pressures that you deal with in day-to-day military life, and looking for something. I kind of got into diving. The group that I was diving with, these guys were taking down camera rigs that were thousands of dollars of housings and strobes and all that, and for good reason, because when you look out and you just see an ocean, a body of water, then you don't really think much about it. But once you go under, there's this whole vast ecosystem down there with life and that you want to tell people about. And I kind of got into photography that way, which is probably the hardest way to get into it. I mean, learning, you got to learn your camera pretty quick and how to light things and all that. So it was really a great experience. And then, fast forward, it was time to leave Okinawa, and I wasn't around an ocean, and it kind of progressed on the land. And that's kind of where we're at today. Is it's continually narrowed in my genre, what I like to photograph, and yeah, that's where I'm at today.
Yeah, and you're primarily photographing forest scenes, or
Forest scenes. It's like everybody else. It's kind of evolved from, the grand landscape to really starting to narrow down to the smaller things where you kind of put your own signature on something.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
No, that's
yeah.
exciting. So, would love to press you a little bit more for some background on kind of your military service
Yep.
and kind of some of the things that you went through that then drove you to seek refuge through photography.
Yeah, so like I said, I've done multiple deployments downrange, and unfortunately, I've seen some bad things and been involved in things that are not, you wouldn't ask very many people to be in situations, and uh, and as I was able to deal with those things pretty easily in my youth when I was younger. And as you get older and, I became a senior leader, you start to see a lot of these trends. We love statistics in the military. We keep track of everything. And you look out across your formations and you see all the behavioral health or mental health issues that are going on in your formations. And just because you're a senior leader doesn't mean you don't have those same issues. And as the writing was getting on the wall that, hey, I'm getting ready to hang this up. Am I going to be able to deal with these things the way I could when I was younger? And the answer is no. I needed to fill those gaps, like I mentioned with the diving, and the photography slowly replaced the diving with something to do. And nature was kind of, I kind of went back to something that I already knew, because growing up where I did, I was surrounded with nature. And I think it was easy for me to kind of seek refuge, as you said, back into something I was comfortable with, and bringing a camera along was part of it. And I do it to be out in nature first of all, and if I happen to get a good image out of that while I'm there, then so be it. I mean, but primary reason is for my own sanity, so to speak.
Yeah, and I'm curious how significant has the impact been in terms of reducing some of the symptoms you were experiencing from PTSD and whatnot?
It's been instrumental. I don't know what I would do without it. It's hard to speak because I'm always out in nature, first of all. So I think that it's night and day. Just talking with my wife, she knows that it's something that I need, which has been great because she's understood that, things that I've been through and then what nature does for me. She would not necessarily like the price tag that comes along with that, but she understands that I need that and it's good for me. So it's been great. I mean, it's definitely something that and I talk to a lot of other soldiers because I'm still in the community here. There's a big community of military here in Japan, and I'm still quite close with it. And that's an avenue too that I'd like to hopefully one day bring to the soldiers there is talk with our morale, welfare, and recreation department. We say MWR, and hopefully get a program started over there to take people out. I mean, not necessarily for photography, but get them out in the nature here, because Japan has an abundance of places to go to kind of explore and to help soldiers deal with that. And I think nature is always good for anybody that's dealing with any kind of mental stress, to get away from the hustle and bustle.
Well, it's funny because I feel like the Japanese have been one of the first cultures that actually scientifically investigated the impacts of spending time in nature and the impacts that they can have on your, not only your mental health, but your physical health, your blood pressure, pretty much everything. So, and your immune system gets increased by swimming. Forest bathing is the kind of the term that they use. But yeah,
it's evident. You can't, when you go out on the weekends, which I try to avoid because it is quite busy. People flooding out of Tokyo, getting out into nature. I mean, that's just what they do. They're getting out of the big city and they're going out into nature to help with that. And I think you're 100% right. Forest bathing is a huge part of their culture here. I mean, it's fascinating to watch them out in nature. They really appreciate it.
Yeah, what does that look like? Because I think about here in the United States, especially since COVID, what I've seen is that it's like It's more driven by like selfies and like like a lot of FOMO and like, oh, look where I've been type of stuff. Whereas in Japan, it sounds like the intent and the purpose of getting out to nature is much different.
Yeah, you're 100% right. That's the difference that I see is, in they don't really know how to take care of the nature, right? So they're going to go out and they're going to respect it. They're not going to trash it up. If anything, they do leave. I don't know if you remember in the Olympics. Bear with me here, but in the Olympics, they would go to one of the events, and their area would be the cleanest area once they left the stadium. I think it was the World Cup. They cleaned everything out of there, and I think it became national news to watch the Japanese clean up after they leave the tournament. No different in nature. I mean, they're going to pick stuff up. You don't see a lot of selfies going on out there, and if you do, they're probably not Japanese.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, man, I feel like we are going to spend a lot of time talking about Japan and Japanese culture. But I wanted to ask you one more question relating to your military service.
Okay.
And I was curious because I don't think I've had anyone else on the podcast that spent that much time in the military. Have you thought about what other ways your 24-year career in the military has influenced your approach to making photographs? Like, are you like making checklists and, it's very regimented, or, what influence has it had on you?
It's just the opposite.
Okay.
It's a great question. So for me, like we talked about, it was an opportunity to get away from that lifestyle. I mean, you live it day in and day out, where to be, when to be. We're going to plan it. We're going to plan it down to the, dot over our I and cross our T's. And I wanted to get far away from that. So when I go, I plan? Initially, I used to plan a lot. And when you do it the way I do it, and it's a weekend warrior, so to speak, you're not going to get the conditions that you want, and you just kind of have to adapt with that. So you kind of throw all that out the window, and that's when I started to get better, was just once I threw all that away. And you do this every day. You got to be where you're supposed to be when you're told to be there. So let's just go and get away from all that and just go with the flow. I'll pick an area on a map, and I'll go to that area and just explore. And that's usually when I come away with my best stuff.
Yeah. No, me too. But like you, it didn't start that way. I mean, I used to be like, okay, I'm going to go to this spot, and I'm going to go to that spot. And, like 90% of the time, it doesn't yield any good results.
Yeah. I mean, not being from Japan, you don't know where to go. I mean, so once you start getting into this and start traveling and venturing further and further out, and you realize it's not as hard as it seems or appears to be because you're in a foreign country. Once I realized it wasn't that difficult, I started to kind of put away the Google Maps and the all the other stuff. Now every once in a while I'll look at some of the hiking maps to kind of look at people's snapshots to give me an idea what the area looks like, but that's about it.
Right. No, I think that's a good approach anywhere you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk more about Japan specifically. Why have you focused so much of your photography there, and what is it about Japan that you love?
COVID really kind of locked me down here, so I haven't been back to the U.S. since 2019.
Okay.
So that's kind of the reason why Japan's been the focus. Not that I wouldn't want to go anywhere else, but there's just so much here. I think that Japan it's just really a special place. I mean, culturally, the ease of access to a lot of the areas to go and venture out into is, again, not as hard as it probably appears to somebody that doesn't live here, but technology is so amazing. Google Maps or whatever's going to take you where you need to be, as long as you make sure you don't go down because some of the roads here get pretty tight, and then you're going to be SOL, So, yeah.
I had that happen to me when I went to Spain. The map thing was like, yeah, turn here, and the road gets narrower and narrower and narrower, and pretty soon, like we got to pull the mirrors in, and then it's like, I think we're gonna get stuck. So we actually had to,
that happens to me all the time. All the time.
Yeah, I was like, this is not a road for cars.
Yeah. Yeah, but right. Japan's just, there's just so much here. And I think once you get past the epic or iconic shots of Mount Fuji and the shrines and all that. There's a lot of stuff, and I think Mark Adamus on your podcast said it. There's more of the world. There's less of the world seen today because of social media. I think he hit the nail on the head with that, especially when it comes to Japan, because people are just going to go to those. They're going to go to Tokyo. They're going to go look at the temples and shrines, and they're going to go to Mount Fuji and take a picture. I mean, I can't shoot Mount Fuji any better than anybody else has already done it. So there's other stuff out there.
Right. Well, and I feel like Japan has got some really interesting and unique forests that are starting to get a little bit of notoriety, and maybe we can talk a little bit about how Japan is starting to kind of emerge on the map a little bit.
Yeah, so the forest again. I think the terrain here is it's pretty unforgiving. It's very steep. There's nothing. I think I always tell everybody you're always walking uphill. So getting to some of these locations is pretty difficult. But once you get into them, I mean, there's just the forest here. The Japanese beech trees are unique. I'm not sure it's because of the way just the way the wind has gnarled them up, or the whatever's causing it. But yeah, the forests are unbelievable, and I think the reason why you're starting to get notoriety of Japan is, some of the photographers here have really kind of stepped out of their comfort zone to kind of go against the norm here culturally, and that's why you're starting to see more of it. And there's definitely a lot more interest. I've had a ton of people reach out to me. I mean, that's the one thing that's good about social media is it's kind of opened some doors for me that I didn't necessarily, maybe some potential career paths that I never even thought about until here of late. So it's definitely changing over here, and I think it's all owed to some of these photographers here in Japan willing to step out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, maybe let's dive a little bit deeper into that cultural difference, because it sounds to me like what you're saying is that the norm in Japan is to kind of keep everything quiet, keep everything on the down low, not really be loud and shouty about our photography or about who we are as photographers. And obviously, if there's not a bunch of photographers running around, saying, look how awesome my photography is, then Japan's not going to really be on the radar for a ton of people.
Yeah, that's right. I think it has a lot to do too, as well as a lot of these photographers were kind of, this is my own perception, just being surrounded by them and talking to them a lot. A lot of the younger ones, Japan's a culture of, experience matters, age matters. So the older you are, people are going to listen to you a lot more. And then when you're younger, hey, you just sit over here and just wait your turn.
Right.
And so you may be an amazing photographer and younger, but you haven't paid your dues. And I think that's what's changing is some of the younger ones are not willing to wait because maybe they don't agree with that. And that's what's changing culturally. And to get recognition within the community, they have kind of forced the hand to kind of be recognized, and they've done that by going out abroad, entering contests like the NLPA or International Landscape Photographer of the Year, and getting recognized. And it's kind of forced the hand over here for some people in the industry, like major manufacturers are over here in Japan, like Nikon, Fuji, to start taking note of them and including them in things. So that's one big thing.
I was gonna say, I feel like we could use a little bit of that culture here. Even though it's had a positive benefit of them kind of shifting away from it a little bit, I feel like there's some major benefits to that culture that I wish we could leverage in the United States.
You talking about the older generation and the experience and all that?
Paying respect to people who came before us, that kind of thing.
I won't say that's a driving main factor for getting out of the military, but things that stuff kind of leaks its way into military service as well. So it was, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, there's pros and cons to both, I'm sure. But
yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about the cultural significance of the recent surge of the interest that's in Japanese landscape destination as a destination. But I'm curious how that's kind of played into your approach as someone who's not from Japan, who's starting to like integrate yourself into that culture as a non-native person. I'm curious what that experience has been like for you.
I wasn't seeking out anyone to really kind of help me. I was just going out again on my own. Some of that solitude, is what I still enjoy the solitude. I prefer. I think I do better when I'm out taking pictures by myself. When it comes to social media, you start to kind of, somebody will recognize your stuff and maybe they appreciate it. And that's what kind of happened here for me. And it opened some doors where I used to just have to search and find all these locations by myself, or I was kind of limited to what I knew from that research. So once some photographers here reached out to me and said, hey, you interested in going to check out this place? And those doors kind of opened up. And I think without them, I think I wouldn't have progressed as much as I have. Not that I'm great, but I've definitely come a long way. And it's given me an opportunity to kind of watch their work, the way they see the landscape, and it's vice versa. I mean, a couple of my friends have always been curious how's a Westerner see our landscape, versus how they see it. And there is a difference, how they approach it. Like you talk about Japan's respect for nature versus, how in the U.S. it seems to be kind of playing out there. But that's what I think is probably helped me the most, is getting tied into some of those people that are here and accepting me, because they see that I do respect, Japan. I do respect their culture, and I do respect nature. And they've been willing to take me out. And I think that's the key, is understanding, trying to take an effort to understand the culture means a lot to the Japanese. So being willing to be open-minded and understand and not do things that are going to embarrass me or them, that plays a big part in it.
So now I'm really curious, from your perspective, what are some of the cultural differences or influences because of culture on the approach to photographing? Like, how do they see the landscape differently than perhaps someone from the United States?
I don't know that it's just how they work a scene. For me, this is my way I see it, is there's not a lot of talk. So it's funny, there's not a lot of talking going on when we get there. We meet at a location, and then they'll just go off on their own. There's no really talking until you get back to the car. They're very quiet, just sit. They'll go out and they'll just sit there for a while, which, this is probably no different than a lot of great photographers in the U.S. And this is why some of them are so good and getting recognized, is though they're willing to just sit there and observe nature a lot more. And they may take 5 photographs. In the beginning, I'd be out there shooting, 100 things, and they'll come back, and my friend will probably have like 5 photographs he's taken, maybe 2.
Right.
And it's just, I think the observation piece is more key for them.
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense. And you think that's driven by culture?
I think so. I think it's not, because it's not about the photography for them as well. I mean, I think it's just about being in nature and enjoying nature. I mean, and they're always picking out things. They'll see things and they'll look and they're going to investigate it, and they may not take a picture of it, but it'll be something that is unique with it. They'll touch a tree. They'll talk to a tree. I mean, it's pretty intimate for them. There's everything. It has some life to it, and they're going to show some gratitude towards it. Yeah.
And I'm guessing, just based on the way that you positively talk about this, that approach has started to rub off on your approach to photography as well.
Yes, 100%. I think it's definitely been a positive impact. I think that you'll catch me talking to a tree now. Just the utmost respect for nature, I think, is the one thing that's, I don't know. Obviously, it's impacted my photography, but it's also how I look at nature and see the landscape is probably one of the added bonuses from being involved in the community and the culture here. It's given me that gift to really appreciate it and start to understand, how this is why this is growing here, this is what this is how long it's been here. All those things that I used to just never care about. Not that I didn't care, I just didn't know to care, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how important it is to us, for all types of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely found, at least from my own photography and studying a lot of other photographers, that the more curious we are about the subjects that we photograph and the more of a connection we can make with that subject through having a more intimate knowledge about how it's created, or what are the life cycles of whatever that subject is, whatever it is, your photographs of those subjects are just going to be better.
100%, yeah. And then to return back to those locations through the various times a year to see how they change and get to know it more intimately, and it's really, like I said, I probably got 6 years of just revisiting some of these locations, and I feel like I'm just now starting to kind of understand them, and I think that has also been a key for improving in my own photography, is being able to return to those places and getting to know those areas more intimately, just by revisiting them and getting to understand the landscape. Yeah definitely. Well, when we were exchanging emails, you had mentioned to me that you're friends with Sho Hoshino, Yep.
and I recently discovered them through my competition, Natural Landscape Photography Awards, and I love their forest photography, and I don't know, their quality of their light in their photos is just really special and magical. What's it been like doing trips with Sho, given the significant language barrier that exists between the two of you?
It's you could probably do you could probably do a TV series on it. It's probably quite funny. It's really fascinating because he's pretty much who I've been talking about. Reaching out on social media, and I've kind of had a backseat view of his progression and his getting recognized. And my Japanese is pretty good. It's not that great. I definitely know when I'm in trouble. You learn that first if you're married to a Japanese spouse. So I'm pretty good, not great, and his English it's gotten a lot better over the last several years hanging out with me. He doesn't have a southern accent, so we'll work on that. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been a fun experience hanging out with him and watching him work and get the recognition that he deserves. And like I said, his use of light and the way he goes about his process of seeking out a subject, especially with forest. We both love forest scenes, and I think it's kind of what attracted us to each other, is that we both love being in the woods, in the forest, looking for these unique trees. And there's not a lot of communicating when we're out there, but when we do, we both understand that we have the same thing in common of, hey, we like this subject matter. We understand cameras. We understand what we're wanting to look at. We don't want any man-made objects in it. We just have the same we speak that lingo. And that's been really awesome to kind of foster that relationship and, again, have a backseat to his progress. I get to tag along.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. And I feel like, the more you can spend time with someone who you highly respect in terms of their photography, that's bound to rub off on you at some point, right?
100%. Yeah. He's taught me a lot, and I don't know that he knows that. I mean, I've told him before, but I don't think he understands that he's taught me a lot just by watching him work. We're never sitting there like I'll never go up to him and be like, "Hey, how did you do that?" or "What are you doing?" We don't talk like that. I just watch him because I don't want to be like Sho Hoshino. I want to get my own voice. So I'll just watch him kind of go about it, and those are the little tidbits that I'll pick up from him.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, I credit my own photography growth to hanging out with a few photographers that I highly admire over the last probably 6 or 7 years. Just spending time with them, watching them work, asking them questions, looking at their work, spending time with them in the field. Paying attention and
That's
you
it.
know, and not being shy about asking questions about, you know, what were you think? How did you figure that one out? Or man, that's an amazing photograph. Like, how did you find that? You know, those kind of things.
Yeah, yeah. It's I'll walk up and he'll be looking at something, and I'll be like, I would never have seen that.
Right.
But the same thing. I mean, he likes there's things that I'll see that he doesn't see, and that's where we talk about earlier. We were talking about how they see things and how maybe a Westerner if he kind of views it. I'm looking at something totally different than him, and he's intrigued by that, and he wants to see that for his own progression. And I think we've fed off each other. I mean, clearly I think he's a lot better than I am, but he's he's definitely taken some things from me, and I've taken some things from him, and we've put those in our toolkit, and
Yeah.
it's been a fun experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
All
he's
right.
not the only one out there though. There's a few of them that
Yeah. Do you have
we
other ones that have inspired you?
yeah, yeah. There's Masaki Nagoshi.
Mm-hmm.
You see, I think he's won something in an LPA before,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
placed. Um, he's another one. He's friends with Sho Hoshino, and we all go together sometimes. But most of the time, I'm with Sho. But yeah, there's quite a few over here that are
Right.
pretty good.
Yeah. Right on. All right. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. I'd love to talk a little bit about kind of learning and education.
Okay.
And what I've found, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, is that a lot of photographers are trying to kind of, self-teach themselves photography by watching YouTube videos. And I feel like you can learn stuff by watching YouTube, but it also doesn't show you what you're maybe missing, or what you're maybe not doing correctly in your process or whatever. And sometimes it's hard to know if YouTube videos have any, gravitas in terms of, legitimacy. So what's been your experience been like in terms of learning photography, and what have you turned to?
So I'm probably like 90% of the people are going to listen to this. Yeah, YouTube University was an initial go-to, and I think it really held me back. I think I'm probably a good 2 years behind where I should be in my mind,
Hmm.
and that's because you're looking at videos, and if you don't know how to, if they're doing an editing process for a specific scene, you're not realizing that scene probably doesn't apply to maybe the type of photography you're doing, and then you're trying to apply that and overlay that on something that, hey, this doesn't fit. Maybe this is a high key image, and you're trying to process for something different. I think those are the things that you can't really, you don't know, right? So you don't know that this is not for that, because they're not going to tell you in that video 9 times out of 10. And I think for me, I got rid of. I appreciate. I like the failure part of it, because I failed a lot trying to
Yeah.
apply some of those things. But like I said, I'm probably 2 years behind, because I finally reached out to a photographer and did a one-to-one, and I did multiple one-to-ones, and started buying some videos of people that kind of have the same look and feel of the type of photography that I'm interested in, and started buying some of those tutorials. I think I bought one from Eric Bennett and Alex Noriega, and then I finally reached out to David Thompson to do one-to-one, and I mean that changed everything, because then you could ask those questions like you talked about, hey, how do you do this, or what is why are you not doing it for this type of image, what is your process, basically, and pick your brain, and then go back to them and have follow-ups. That's been huge and instrumental, and I tell anybody that I talk to now is you need to do that. You're just going to delay. You can go at your own, but you're just going to delay the process a lot longer.
Yeah, I agree. It's really good to have. I mean, essentially, what we're talking about here is mentorship, right? I mean,
Yeah.
having someone that you can bounce questions off of, you can show them an image, you can say, hey, what do you think of this one? They can be super honest with you, because it's not like you have any skin in the game. It's not like they're going to piss you off. I mean, I guess if you're asking someone like that for help, and then you don't like what they have to say, like, That's a
Yeah,
whole other
I mean,
thing. But
that's what I told David. I said, "Hey, man, I was a drill sergeant in the Army, and you can yell at me. Just give it to me. Tell me my stuff's hot garbage, and I'll move on."
right. Yeah, and I mean that's how you get better, right? Like someone looks at your stuff and it's like, oh man, I mean I see what you're trying to do here, but like you need to do X, Y, and Z, and then it's like, okay, I didn't even that. Thank you, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And for further to record, David didn't like yell at me and tell me this is hot garbage.
No, no, of course
No,
not.
he wouldn't do that.
No, no. Actually, I did a one-on-one with him a couple of years ago after I got back from a trip from the redwoods, and it was really helpful.
Yeah. So I credit your podcast for kind of introduced me to his work back in the day, and I have the kind of mind of when I hear things. He was talking about mid-tone contrast and tweeners and things, and I was like the Winnebago man, like what the hell is mid-tone contrast? I don't know what that is. So I went down that rabbit hole, and then that's how this started all. The process of reaching out to him and then improving.
Yeah, I always have to laugh because every time I have a photograph that has like any type of color cast in it, I think of David Thompson because he just hates color cast. And I actually edited a photo today where I know he's gonna yell at me when I post it because it was like the sun is screaming, the light from the sun is screaming across this iceberg, and the scene behind it is all baked in orange light, and there was a color cast, like the sun was casting a color, and he's gonna be like, man, there's a color cast. I'm like, yeah, but it was literally there.
Yeah, yeah. It's fun. I asked him about that, and he said, sometimes, there's a color cast, but I think, he definitely doesn't like the color cast. And that was one of the first things we talked about, was color cast.
It makes a huge difference. I mean, I had another photo I was editing today that had tons of color casts, and I got rid of it, and it looked 100 times better, like instantly. It's like, oh, because what it does is you create color separation.
Yeah, that's it. So once you figure out how to get rid of it, because it's not that hard. No. Once you figure it out, and then you can really start to separate your colors and really start to bring to life your image. I mean, once he helped me with that, then that was a game changer for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, I feel like we've kind of already talked about the importance of mentorship, but what was kind of your process for seeking out mentorship? Sounds like you heard someone talking, you liked what they had to say, and then you just went with it, or
yeah, so in the military, mentorship's really big. I mean, for career progression, and I should have known this as I got into this and was kind of going it at my own, but I think there was some kind of fear. How bad is my photography? And then reaching out and kind of getting over that, and then say, hey, if you're going to improve, you're going to have to reach out to somebody. So kind of shedding some of that fear to be able to reach out to someone like a David Thompson, and not know, how they going to, what kind of, because I don't know David, like I didn't know him at the time, right? So is he going to be a good fit or not to help? And I couldn't have been any luckier. I mean, he's just how he is on any of the podcasts or videos you see of him or whatever. He's just a great guy, and he's willing to help, and he was instrumental in helping me. And I think once I got over that fear of rejection or whatever, whatever was going on in my mind, once I got over that and sought out the help, I mean, I think that was huge, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like, I think for a lot of people, there's that fear you're just talking about, like, oh, what are they going to say about my photographs? But also, like, sometimes we just got to leave the ego at the door. One of my biggest struggles as a photographer has been, like, way back when I first started, I caught on to photography really fast in terms of the technical side. Like, I understood it pretty quickly. So then after that happened, I was like, oh, I'm good. I'm the best ever. But it's, like, that's just like, that's the foundation, like you have so much more to learn. And it's, if you don't have that ego checked, pretty regularly, you're gonna stagnate.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I still reach back out to David, and we talk a lot about, hey, I'll bounce a photo. I had a collection of autumn photos. I sent him and, asked for his opinion before I released them. It's the first time I ever did that. Usually I just drip a photo out and I was like, all right, I'm going to stick to my guns and wait, and I'm going to edit these as a collection and then get his eyes on them. That was the first time I'd done that. And, he was pretty honest, and it was a great experience. I don't know that holding photos like that is my style. It's kind of
It's hard.
It's burning a hole in my pocket. Like I was like, come on, man, I need to get these out. Like there was several of them in there that I was really proud of, and I was like, man, but I weathered through it and waited and released them all at once.
Yeah, and then you have that guy who, like, what was it? Maybe 4 or 5 months ago, he released a Death Valley gallery that had images from like 2010 or something. I'm like, seriously?
It's insane.
You've been just holding on this for a decade?
Insane.
Come on.
I don't know how they do it. Man, I'm telling you, and I only held them for 2 months.
Right, and that probably was like crushing you, right?
Brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah,
So,
it's hard. But it is kind of fun releasing a body of work in that way, I think.
It is. And to be honest, it was the right. I see the benefit in it because I would go back and I would look at them and once I never really felt like this. Once I was done with that, I was done with them. I had made the corrections. I had gone back and tweaked them here and there. And then once I was done with one of those photos, I was just done. And I didn't want to see it again.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, time to move on. Let's move on to winter.
Right. Well, I feel like when you release photos in a collection like that, there's a little bit more skin in the game in terms of looking at the photos over and over again to make sure you didn't miss any issues. Because I did the same thing with my fall color gallery this year. I've been releasing them as galleries too, and I think I narrowed it down to about 60, and then I got Brent Clark to help me. I'm like, Brent, what do you think of these? And he's like, let's get it down to 30. And I'm like, oof, really? 30? Ouch, okay. But it helped me really curate down to the ones that I thought were the best. And I think it is a good process because it forces you to really, even though you have photos in there that you still sort of it's not your best.
That's right. Yeah. So I think that's probably the the other thing is that I learned about it is are these photographers that I really like, they're great, but I'm sure they take a lot of bad photos, but they're really great at curation.
Absolutely.
I think that's really, that was one of those light bulb moments for me over this last deal. It's it's the curation piece that I'm, maybe that's where I'm at now is because I feel like I'll take something really good and then I may release something the next week and it's, so.
Right. Well, and it's an easy trap to fall into if you are the type of person that is wanting to play the social media game, right? You have to feel like you're dripping content constantly. I've been spending a lot of time this week on Threads, which is that new Instagram spin-off that's sort of like Twitter, which I actually really like, but I see a lot of people on that platform just doing that process of dripping out not the best photos, but they're just trying to stay relevant and they're trying to get eyeballs on their account, and it's you're probably not going to get remembered for being a good photographer if that's your approach.
Yeah, I can't do it. I got a 7-year-old, so to keep up with all these social media platforms,
yeah,
I do barely. I don't really care about social media. I just do it, for Instagram. Instagram's really it, and my website. So I've really started to pour more into my website and kind of get it where I want it because it'll be a constant. You don't ever know about social media platforms, and I don't play the algorithm game, and that's probably why I don't have very many followers. So
yeah, but I mean, I didn't think we were going to talk about this, but what I find super interesting about the algorithm game that people are playing constantly is that unless you somehow hit the lottery. Like you somehow find the magic formula to get, 200, 300, 400, 500,000 followers. Playing the algorithm is not really gonna be that great of a use of your time and energy. I mean, it's just not.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, I've got a family to do things with, and it's about and I realized that a long time ago with social media. I can't, I don't have time for it. Plus, being in the military, you can't really, they don't want you saying a whole lot or doing a lot on social media for obvious reasons. So I think that kind of helped me kind of stay away from it, from playing those games. And plus, my photography's for me, and if other people get to enjoy it, like I'll use it as a tool to direct them to the website, and so be it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get it though. I mean, people are hungry because they want people to notice them and their photography, and so many people want to become quote unquote full-time photographers without really having a full understanding of what that actually even looks like. But at the end of the day, it's like social media is just a small piece of that, like you can get, if you want to make a name for yourself, like produce content that helps other people, or, maybe, write really interesting blog posts, or, write a book, or, create a podcast or a really engaging YouTube channel or whatever it is. But like just constantly posting on social media and like hoping people see you it just looks desperate.
Yeah. I mean, the thing for me is the networking piece of it is what I've really liked the most about it. I mean, the networking, it's opened some doors for me, for sure. I mean, that's how I met Hoshino, and this year I'm helping the guys from Lofoten Tours come over. They're going to do a tour in 2025 in Hokkaido. They asked for help. So, I mean, there's been some things that have been positive for it.
Yeah.
There's also, the flip side of it. So
right.
just managing it.
Well, maybe that's a good segue for you to talk about the workshop that you're going to do with Sho Hoshino and David Thompson, because for me, that sounds like a magical combination made in heaven.
Yeah, so I just mentioned the Lofoten Tours guys. They reached out to me and said, hey, we're interested in coming over. Can you tell us about Hokkaido? We'd like to, hire you as a fixer. And I was like, okay, I don't know if I can do this. But quickly, as I was kind of building out a plan for them, my military senses come in, and I start working a kind of a timeline itinerary and things, putting it together. I was like, man, we could do this here. Because there's a gap in Japan and there's a want to come over and see it. But, I think there's a niche for, getting out into nature and not those iconic places. I mean, there's more to Japan to discover than the Mount Fuji and the temples and shrines that I've mentioned several times here. I think there's like over 1,500 different volcanoes. You got the forests. And a lot of these places are more dramatic than Mount Fuji and more remote, but still easily accessible. So I think there was a opportunity to look at that, and I talked to Hoshino about it. And as we were talking, I was like, maybe, because David had talked to me several times about how he'd love to come over here and see it, because he's seen some of Sho's work and some of the locations. We'll see if David would be interested, and he is, and we kind of put our heads together and come up with a date, and we're looking at autumn and next year to get this kind of off the ground and running.
And what is autumn in Japan? Is that like October?
Yeah, so it starts late September, depending on where you're at in the island and what elevation, but kind of late September all the way to December, first week of December. You're still, as you get down to sea level, early December. Wow, but we're targeting mid for the areas that we'll be going to in Nagano Prefecture, about mid-October of next year. And this is something that we're going to look to continue to do moving forward, is bringing somebody over.
I love it.
Yeah, maybe we get you to come over one time.
Oh, count me in. Yeah, those are my kind of scenes. Every time I see shows photos, I'm like, oh, take me there. That's
Yeah.
magical.
Yeah. So he's me and him are going, like I talked about, we're going to Hokkaido next month. So it should be, that's our first time going together there. And it'll be fun to watch him kind of work those scenes, especially as those minimalistic scenes that are all over the place there. So it should be a good time.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, Mark. Well, other than show, who's some other photographers that you would recommend that we learn more about?
So, I mean, you talking about in Japan or
Just in general.
in general?
Yeah.
I like Bill Ferngren. I think I'm saying his name. I'm going to butcher some names here
That's
probably.
the second time this week someone's mentioned his name to me.
He's just, I love his, it's just a quiet and intimate approach. I like how he approaches scenes, and it puts out quality work time after time. And I've talked to him a few times on social media. He's somebody that I'm quite liking. And Kristen Weinhold from Germany is somebody that I've been keeping an eye on and watching their work. I mean, they're just, again, there's kind of a theme here. I like that those quiet and intimate scenes in nature. And
I like
those two.
I like her stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Jared Boaz, I hope I'm saying that right, from California. I've talked to him quite a bit. Seems like he's got a pretty interesting life. Does a little bit of music and some YouTube. And I like how he approaches his photography. And I think what I like about his YouTube channel is he doesn't just put out videos for the algorithm. It doesn't seem like he's doing it for the algorithm. He's going to put out something when it's ready, and not rush his photography to kind of meet those requirements to hit the algorithm for YouTube. That's how I see it, but it's really good quality stuff. And then last one is a Japanese photographer who also has a YouTube, but he's part of that crew with Hoshino and them, and that's Yokota Shinji. Photoshin is his handle on social media. Great guy, speaks English, great, lived in Canada for a while.
Oh, okay.
So he's another photographer that's definitely kind of put Japan on the map as well.
Nice. Well, Mark, this has been awesome.
Thanks, Matt. It's been fun. First podcast, so.
You did great.
Thanks, man.
Awesome. Well, thank you to Mark for the great conversation. I hope to be able to take you up on your offer to visit Japan someday, as it is very high on my list of places to photograph. Keep up the great work with your photography and your help in being an ambassador for the Japanese photography community. On the podcast, you heard a lot about the importance of getting critiques on your images. This is a critical step in improving as a photographer. One of the best ways to do this, other than one-on-one mentorship, is to join us over on the Nature Photographers Network in the Critique Forum. It is my go-to place to engage with other photographers on a regular basis. I love the Critique Forum there, and being exposed to such great photography on a regular basis has improved my approach to the craft. For just $49 per year, you can leverage everything NPN has to offer. Be sure to use the code FSTOP10 for your 10% off discount. Just go to npn.link/fstop to join, or find a link in the show notes. See you there. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for stopping in, collaborating with us, and listening. See you next week.